success, and experience. Representing people in hundreds of jury trials, Nathaniel Lee is who you want by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Cosell, and Feigley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. I have my superstar panel, superstar lawyer Vanita Banks, cybersecurity expert, and attorney Marlon Prime, former assistant United States attorney. And we have an exciting show today, but we start out with a sad note today. We have a generational leader, one of the greatest civil rights advocates of our generation, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, passing this week. He fought the good fight, and unfortunately, his life ended this week. But there were some notable things that he had done, and I'd like to make the audience aware of it. He was involved in civil rights leadership. He started working with Martin Luther King. He helped organize the Chicago branch of Operation Breadbasket in 1966, folks. He was a political trailblazer in 1984 and 1988. He ran for the Democratic presidential nomination. He became the first African American to make a serious nationwide bid for the presidency. He got 6.7 million votes in 1988, and that was phenomenal. And then he formed the Rainbow Push Coalition back in 1971, National Rainbow Coalition in the mid-'80s. And that was to advocate for economic justice, social rights, and a multiracial political alliance. He also had the economic justice. He developed boycotts against major corporations that discriminates against Blacks, employees, and consumer, demanding increased hiring, wages, and investment in minority community. He acted in diplomatic international diplomacy. He acted as an international negotiator, securing the release of hostages and prisoners in various countries, including Syria, Iraq, and Yugoslavia. And but one of the most important things he did of all, and none of these are minor, they were monumental, voter registration. The Reverend Jesse Jackson understood the importance of voting, and he worked to mobilize massive voter registration, for example, and that helped, for example, to elect Harold Washington mayor of the city of Chicago. So with all those great things, we say salute to one of the greatest civil rights icons of any generation. And we thank him and his family for the wonderful thing they did, the impact they had on America and our democracy. So thank you, Reverend Jackson. Rest in peace. And that's your hometown, Vanita, Attorney Banks. What's your thoughts?
Well, I am just heartbroken along with the world at this time. We're mourning the loss of the great Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. And Reverend Jackson, he inspired my entire legal career. He was a mentor to me and countless lawyers and professionals nationally and globally. He participated in every National Bar Association meeting, and he didn't just attend, and we didn't just honor him, although we honored him on many, many occasions. He was a strategist, an advisor, a supporter, and inspiration to our leadership and our membership. And he helped us, the National Bar Association, the legal conscience of our nation, live up to our mission. He was devoted to the National Bar Association, and he last joined us during our 100th Annual National Bar Association Convention in Chicago this past July 2023. 25. He stood with the NBA in many battles. Um, he advised our leadership during challenging times. We worked with him on voter registration and voter suppression strategies. And while we will miss him dearly, he trained us and countless disciples across the world. He left an indelible impact and legacy, and we will continue his legacy of leadership and service to our communities. He was indefatigable, and it was often noted, Attorney Primes and Lee, that he racked up hundreds of thousands of miles jetting across the nation advocating for civil and human rights, economic empowerment and opportunity, and social justice, and of course, voting rights. I had the opportunity of knowing him and meeting him many times through the National Bar Association, and so grateful that we had personal access to him at any time. I also had an opportunity to work with him during my tenure at Allstate, where we collaborated and partnered to increase Allstate's business relationships with minority owned insurance agencies and diverse suppliers. And so I'm confident that his legacy is going to continue to be carried out by leaders who he has impacted across the world.
Yes, I mean certainly we lost a giant in Reverend Jackson, and there are so many different areas, as we mentioned before, that he had an impact on. Elections, I think, is one of them. Getting people to vote, and the importance of voter registration. And not only did it lead to the election of Harold Washington, but it was awakening and allowed a number of African American politicians around the country to be elected to offices. It's no accident that if you look at the membership of the Congressional Black Caucus, it substantially increased in the aftermath of Jesse Jackson's run for president in 84 and 1988. And then I think too, in terms of his philosophy, that hey, although we've gotten many challenges that have been thrown in the way, he was really an inspirational leader and indicated that yes, we can. Really encourage a whole generation of people to really think beyond themselves and achieve. And then I think the other issues in terms of hiring minorities. So the Wall Street Project, there's a number of African American professionals in C-suites, not because Jesse Jackson was trying to get hold of it, just basically trying to give people an opportunity and let these corporations really think beyond the core group of people that they're usually going to like. So to make a long story short, he's had a very wide and lasting impact. We are all the better for his efforts, not only in the United States, but around.
There was something locally that most people don't realize how impactful the Reverend Jesse Jackson was even in Indianapolis. I remember back in the 80s, Carl Radford was the president of our local NAACP, and I was a vice president. And we saw the impact that the economic boycott had in America, particularly during that time period. Everybody forget that we were getting past the segregation era just in 1965. And so, but what occurred, folks, particularly like in Indianapolis, we had no employment and management in the local utility companies like IP&L, never had hired a Black manager. The banks weren't loaning money to Black customers, is not at the level of white. And so there was a series of things that was important locally. But when they started this economic boycotts and stuff, with the assistance of Dennis Hayes, who was the counsel of the NAACP, it started this process called fair share agreements, right? So under the fair share agreement, we ended up negotiating one of the model ones for the United States in the sense that we were able to get the utility company to agree to hire 10% of his managers as black. They had not hired a single one at that point. But it went further because of the momentum, particularly his presidential run. It gave us the idea of also meeting with bank officials and working out deals so bank would lend money to black folks as, at least better than we were doing, but also we negotiated deals where they would give contracts of black for vendors, right? So all of this was a secondary impact of the civil rights movement of Jesse Jackson's and others. And we were the beneficiaries of that because once we got some momentum going, it just expanded. And then now we saw, for example, going forward, we had the situation with Target, and when they folded, and we see a successful boycott, economic boycott. It's lowered their stock valuation, and it let the corporate world know that the $1 trillion or so that blacks spend in American economy is important. And so, and then now we saw just yesterday, Marlon, Vanita, that the Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision, for example, it struck down those tariffs, and Costco, one of my favorite vendors in the whole planet, Costco is going to hopefully get back their money in tariff that they paid. And Costco did not fold, and they continue to fight that. And so we see the remnants of Jesse Jackson legacy that is just as impactful today, especially today, than it was back in the 80s and the 90s.
He left a tremendous blueprint for us to follow. And people ask, well, what can we do? One of the things that we can do to honor Jesse is if we don't know, we can learn about who he was and what he did. And you outline those 6 areas, at least 6 areas, from Wall Street to a global hostage negotiator to Silicon Valley. Marlon referenced his Wall Street project. He established the Wall Street Project and exerted his influence on Wall Street in 1996. And the whole focus was on promoting economic inclusion and increasing minority business opportunities and fostering diversity in the C-suite and the boardroom. And he opened the doors to so many minority businesses and executives. And then, of course, his he was a 2-time candidate for president of the United States, the second African American candidate behind the great Shirley Chisholm to run for president in 1972. She ran, opening a door for Jesse Jackson to envision running for president. But he was a game changer there, Nathaniel and Marlon as well, because you may recall that he changed the game and built a coalition of people from rural to labor to a rainbow coalition, if you will, that all came together to support his candidacy. And he also changed, I understand, the winner take all balloting, and really laid the groundwork for the modernization of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, without question. I think the thing is that it's really important. We, should remember his legacy, but just remember that he set the breadcrumbs for us to continue his legacy. And I think that we really need to reflect on a couple of things. One, his message of, economics, using our political power. So I think we need to still exert that. And, although, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion has been challenged around the country, it's important that we work together and say, hey, we're not going to support entities that don't have a workforce that reflects those of us that are patroning them. And so I think that's an important move forward. The other thing that I'm thinking about as well, is you can look at on your show, Nathaniel, we've talked a lot about Project 2025. And a big part of that project is trying to reverse a lot of things that Reverend Jackson did, especially in the area of voter registration. Right now, there was an article in the New York Times talking about the efforts of many of those in the Trump administration that were involved in these false claims about improprieties in the 2020 election now have very significant roles in his campaign. And there are, thoughts out loud that there may be, attempts to, purge voter rolls, discourage people from voting, having ICE officials around to discourage our brothers and sisters of Hispanic descent from voting. So those are things that we really need to pay close attention to and make sure that we honor Reverend Jackson, but we also follow his breadcrumbs and his medicine.
Well, I guess we'll transition over to what has been the hottest topic in America. And I woke up this morning, counselors, and I was saddened to see this report on the latest debacle involving ICE. It was just sad. They were highlighting this 2-month-old baby that was born in the United States that had bronchitis, and ICE. And I learned for the first time that ICE is detaining these pregnant women, some of which are traumatized and having miscarriages and things like that. And it was sad to me to hear that there's no decency anymore. And when they were talking about putting these streams of incarceration for these people that are being detained and how they're being mistreated, and you see that, we talked about the horrors of the shooting, but there's just so much mass terrorism, and hopefully one day in the near future that these acts seem like to me is the epitome of criminality, that they don't go unpunished. It's just a sad day in America to see how these folks are being treated. It's almost like as citizens, we're powerless to do anything about it. The only thing we could do, of course, is vote the people out in power at the midterm. And that seems like because they have a massive budget of $85 billion, and apparently they feel they have immunity from even murder. I don't get it, Marlon.
Yeah, it's definitely a sad day where some of the things that are going on with ICE. I know we've talked on your show about just how it's just vastly different in terms of how things have worked in both Democratic and Republican administrations in terms of the things that are going on now. And you're right, we have provided a massive infusion of cash to ICE. There have been a number of people that have been hired. There have been a number of press reports that the people that are being hired, aren't a diverse group, and there are people that are really trained to, deal and de-escalate. And so we're seeing the fruits of that failure in terms of the shootings and things that are happening. But I think it's just important that we recognize that, hey, these are human beings. And even the Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court, has affirmed that if anybody, regardless of their immigration status, is entitled to due process, and that's what a number of these cases around the country are basically saying over and over again. And, that shouldn't be a controversial issue, Nathaniel, that someone, regardless of where they stand, should have an opportunity to address the charges against them, have competent counsel. But we see this administration is not doing that. So it's certainly unfortunate.
Are we seeing
Attorney Banks, one quick question on this, Attorney Banks. With the omnipresent of ICE everywhere, and they got guns, they're pepper spraying people, do you think that will be impactful in terms of voter turnout, particularly minority communities?
I do. I very much do. I think so across the nation. I think those that may have voted for him did not believe that the um, immigration policies would be executed in the way that they're being executed, that ICE and potentially the National Guard would be weaponized against many U.S. citizens without any due process, untrained in crowd control, de-escalation, pepper spraying, and killing two American citizens. Uh, I believe, based on the protests that we witnessed across this nation, that people will come out in the midterms in a big way. I really do.
I hope you.
I'm concerned about one factor, Counselor, is that there's no accountability. So we don't know whether or not there's been 20 people murdered or 1,000 at this point, because a lot of people just disappeared, it seems like, off the radar.
Right. And every day we hear another situation like you referenced with the little baby. Um, and we talked about the uh, citizen here, uh, I believe in Chicago. Yes, I know in Chicago, that was forced out of his home, in a bathrobe and shorts, and he and his daughter were deported to um, Texas. And these detention facilities are deplorable, but because of the outcry and outrage, they were ultimately ordered to be released. The one thing that we also have to look at very closely is that we heard Tom Homan talking about, a drawdown in Minnesota, but there are ICE agents, still there. And they are also deployed across the nation. It's my understanding that there are 150 warehouses across this country that are being looked at or targeted for detention centers in Arizona and Texas and Missouri and other states across the country. And so we have to be very attuned to that and call it out. Uh,
Go ahead.
No. I think that hopefully that a big start out in terms of people voting and connecting what's going on with ICE raids and some of the debacles that we've been talking about on the show. But one of the things I think that we have to do in the community is that we have to make sure that we, bridge that disconnect. It's great to protest, but I would, make sure that everyone that's out there, these massive crowds that we're seeing around the country, not only show up to protest, but make sure that each and every one of the people that are out there are registered to vote. Because if you remember, when President Trump was elected the first time, there were a number of protests after he was elected, and they had news media going from person to person to person, and a number of them said, hey, they did not vote or they did not register. So we have to understand that it's okay to protest. The next step of that process is making sure that you're registered to vote, you know where your polling place is, and then you exercise your right to vote.
We're seeing a lot of momentum here in Chicago and across Illinois, where historically voter turnout, as you know, is low in midterm elections. And so estimates that I've read suggest that turnout could be as high as 40%. And that's not even high, but 20 to 40% is a huge increase. But there's a lot of focus, momentum around voter education, engagement, mobilization, and ultimately turning the vote out on election day.
Well, moving forward, let me get this, and we'll talk about terrorists next. Let me get this one caller off the line. Pierre, you have a question or comment for us today, sir? Go ahead.
Oh, I just had a comment. I know the subject was ICE. Here's the thing. You know, I just recently got out of the race against Andre Carson because, you know, what's that one lady? She jumped in at the last minute, and some other folk, and I wanted to see. I didn't want to see this. What's her name? Destiny Wells. I didn't want to see her win, nor Hornado. So I didn't want to draw any votes away. But one of the things that I was going to talk about was ICE. And, you know, I'm not jumping on the get rid of ICE bandwagon. We've got one of the reasons why the Democratic Party lost the last election is because we did a poor job, a very poor job at immigration. Me personally, I support the Obama immigration plan and the way he handled it. Once Trump is out of office and we put a Democrat back in, we're still going to have to get serious about immigration and getting the people who don't belong here or came here illegally. They just have to go back. Now, people that have been here for a while, we've got to find another way. But yeah, we have to have a tough immigration program. We've got to secure our borders. And like I said, the Democratic Party is got to get serious about immigration. Another thing we've got to get serious about is the rise of Islam in this country. We got to talk about it. And, you know, we're not talking about these issues. These people running against Andre Carson, they ain't talking about it. You see? So ICE is being misused right now by the Trump administration. But once we get a Democrat back in office and get some sensible immigration enforcement like we had under Obama, that's what we need, Nate. That's what we need.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now the next issue that hit like a bomb was the Supreme Court decision that dealt with terrorists. The Supreme Court made a decision on the recurring theme caused by the president himself of unilaterally imposing tariffs on everybody on the planet. And he was doing it under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And they've went with the idea that that gave the President of the United States to unilaterally impose tariffs on every country in the world, including one that had no citizen, and whether they were ally, friends, or foe. And so the argument was the President of the United States asserts the extraordinary power to unilaterally impose tariffs of unlimited amount, duration, and scope in light of the breadth, history, and constitutional context of that asserted authority. The court said he must identify clear congressional authorization to exercise this power. So the power to tax under our Constitution, folks, has always been the purview of the of Congress. Our Constitution requires that Congress levy or pass bills or legislation for taxation purposes. And the president apparently was found to usurp that power. And so that's going to be one of the monumental decisions in our American history. And the reason being, if the Supreme Court, even though it was 6-3 decision, if went the opposite direction, that would have been tantamount to the termination of democracy as we know it. Because if you gave the president unlimited power and superseded the power of Congress, folks, then that means that we have a dictatorship. See, in other words, if Congress can be ignored, that's eliminate our system of checks and balances that we all strive to achieve in America. So, but Marlon, Vanita, the issue is they say it was $372 billion or something, and whatever it was in tariffs that were collected. And they were making a big deal about that. I was saying the people were suing because they were saying that you're taking our money illegally. I didn't understand why that would be a big issue in terms of you have to get back refund with interest, in my opinion. I don't know. Am I reading that wrong?
No, you're not. And the court did not address the issue of refunds. And Governor Pritzker provided the administration with an invoice for, I think, $8 billion reimbursement back for tariffs that had been collected in the state of Illinois. The 6-3 decision issued yesterday. The Supreme Court held that Trump's imposition of tariffs is unconstitutional. And the lawsuit was brought by what I believe at least 12 states and a small business toy manufacturer in Vernon Hills, Illinois, here in Lake County. The case is entitled Learning Resources versus Trump. And the court held that the administration could not use this International Emergency Economic Powers Act to justify his global tariffs. In fact, that act does not even mention tariffs. And so, simply stated, the tariffs are taxes. And we've discussed that on many occasions, colleagues. And they're taxes that are passed down to the American people. And the power to tax, impose duties, is solely the authority of the U.S. Congress, which is the keeper of the nation's purse.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think the through line, for your audience, Nathaniel, is that, when politicians, have these theories, it's important to really do your homework. I mean, this administration really touted the fact that these tariffs, were, just there was no cost. This was money that was going to be directly coming into the Treasury. And this week, the New York Federal Reserve has been widely reported. Basically, came to the conclusion that these tariffs are borne by the American people. And so, we do have to do a better job in terms of just, analyzing, what our politicians are saying and seeing if it meets reality. Because, what was, advocated in terms of the benefits of these tariffs really weren't accurate on a number of different levels.
And this case was lost, at two courts below. And we know the administration views the Constitution as an inconvenience, in the president's and this administration's zeal to expand or govern by illegal executive order and to expand executive power through its implementation of Project 2025. I think potentially this decision may signal that his challenge to birthright citizenship may also be vulnerable.
Oh, man. Okay. Imhotep, you have a question or comment for today, sir? Go ahead. Good morning, sir.
Nate,
go ahead.
Brother
Yes,
Nate,
sir.
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, let me get back to can you hear me now, Nate? Brother Nate?
Loud and clear. Go ahead, sir.
All right, good. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking my call. Thanks, Brian. I don't know where we would be if we didn't have, I know I have a few attorneys, my family, and my mother, and we get on some stuff, and I try to learn a lot from listening. But listening from different takes, it's a lot. Attorney Banks, the Chicago Hammond Bears thing, what are we doing here? First, I know this is a little bit of a sidebar. Nate, we have a stadium downtown right now that won't be paid for until 2037. Indianapolis pays, taxpayers in Indiana pay our eighth out of 30 cities with the revenue, with being responsible for revenue for stadiums. So we're going to pay for another stadium? That doesn't make any sense to me. Going to the tariffs, I read the opinion from Kavanaugh. That was something. He denied Biden. He voted against Biden for doing student loan forgiveness with the same logic that he said Trump should have for doing tariffs. Law is supposed to be logic. Where do they come from? I don't understand where their logic. They just go back and forth. Then Trump comes out and says, "Well, I'm going to put 10% on the whole world." I thought they just voted, ruled against that. So we'll see where that goes. Walmart has just reported that their profits are through the roof, and it's not because of salaries below $50,000. Aldi's have reported too. Aldi's rebuilt 180 new stores. It's because of households that make over $100,000 are using them more. So tariffs probably have responsibility for that. We're going with it. As far as ICE is concerned, no, I don't like anything that this administration does. I respect Pierre. I consider him a brother, but I disagree with him on any of these tactics. Yes, Obama did do deportation, but you had DACA, you had the DREAM Act, you had other ways of people who work and pay taxes, and they can't take any. They pay taxes, but they don't get any services, which is a misnomer from the GOP. And I just want to bring something to it. He talks about this rise of Islam. Now, I'm a former Muslim. I'm not anymore, but I don't see a rise of Islam in America causing any problems in America. Matter of fact, we see a hypocrisy from people who claim to be Christians. We just got a bill in the state of Indiana, Attorney Banks, I'm sure Nate knows, that they want to criminalize and lock up homeless people. Is that Christian? So I get tired of that. That's a right-wing trope. Matter of fact, if you listen, Pierre, the former George Herbert Walker Bush had Yasser Arafat in the White House in 2006. And in 2006, Herbert Walker Bush said Islam was a great religion. He praised Islam. Matter of fact, he was one that wanted the two-state solution with all the bad he did, counting Iraq and September 11th and Katrina not responding and stuff like that. But we'll throw that in there. So I don't know where you're going with this rise of Islam, because Christian nationalism is what's destroying this country right now. White male Christian nationalism, just to be exact about it. Nothing. There is not one bill, one law, one proposal, one ordinance, one mandate, or anything coming from a person of Islamic descent that's hurting anybody in America. So we got to be clear. Please don't bring those right-wing tropes into it. I don't like that, because we have to be clear who's doing this. We just had Mike Johnson in the House deny Jesse Jackson to lie in state, yet they flew flags half-mast for Charlie Kirk, a devout racist. So we got to be clear. We got to draw the lines and be clear what we're looking at here. And there's nothing from this administration that is anything worth championing. Nothing. I want to be clear about that. Thank you for taking my call.
Okay.
And going back
Okay.
to the immigration issue, for years and years and years, the Congress has been working on bipartisan immigration reform, right? And most recently, there was a bipartisan bill that was agreed to, across the lines. But you'll recall that Trump thwarted that bill for political reasons. He didn't want to see that success. So there's a blueprint out there for comprehensive immigration reform. And hopefully, as the caller said, once the administration changes, we can move forward with that.
Okay, let me go back to the line. Hey, caller, you have a question or comment for it. Go ahead.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I'm on the air.
And welcome.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
I'm on the air.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I don't know anything about politics. All I know to do is to vote. But I do know money. And I know scripture, the love of money is the root of all evil. And if you present somebody who has no money with $10,000 that you just tell this little lie, and I'll give you $10,000, who's gonna not do that? And you got all these billionaires in Congress, not billionaires in Congress, but billionaires and trillionaires or whatever they are, passing out money to people in Congress and the Senate, passing things out to them. And really, they're betraying the country. They really don't care anything about what's going on with the average citizen. They care about money and power. And Trump does not care about what anybody thinks about anything. All he cares about is money and power, and how he can manipulate people and exploit people and use everybody to his advantage to get what he wants. And that has nothing to do with politics per se. I mean, it's political in terms of breaking laws or what have you. But the bottom line is he doesn't care about politics. He doesn't care about the law. He cares about what he wants and the power that he has to initiate it. And that's down the road. I mean, MAGA and all this other stuff going on has nothing to do with caring about the United States. It has all to do about his money, position, influence, fear for white America to think that Black Americans and minorities are going to take over the country, and white people are scared. Yeah, they got white, let's make America great again. White people are scared that Black people are going to take over and avenge them and all this kind of stuff, fear he's put into people. And he wants the power. He wants that. And he's gotten that. And it goes past politics into something that people are going to have to either stand up in the Senate and the House and say, we're not going to take your money. We're going to stand for the United States and what we believe in and believe in the Constitution, or we're going to fall. And that's what they're doing. They're buckling over his power, and all those who are standing with him, they're buckling under that, and they're not doing anything about it. And to me, they don't seem to care, or they don't They're just betraying this country, really. They're basically betraying the basic rights of citizenship, citizens in this country. I don't care even if you're not a citizen. You have certain rights according to the law, and they're not being instituted, and it's all because of money and power and position. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, caller. And here, I'll get one more caller. Caller, you had a question or comment for us today. Go ahead. Who are you?
Hi, this is Renee Schultz from New York City. Basically, just a comment or just a topic that I'm interested in. Apparently, there's been some reporting that Elon Musk has been found to have voted twice in Georgia through this organization, some kind of PAC or some organization that sends out ballots, pre-printed ballots. And it's kind of been in the background and nobody's really talking about it, but I think it's going to explode. And the reason why is because, first of all, pre-printed ballots are illegal to be sending out in any state. And the fact that he only got a slap on the wrist, well, once they start checking into this organization that sends out these pre-printed ballots, they're probably going to find that there are duplicate votes for a lot of people, and probably most of them are going to be Republican because I think this organization is Republican. Has anybody seen anything about this? And I'm talking about the 2024 election.
I have not. There's so many things in the news cycle, I just can't keep up with all. It's just every day the level of criminality always amazes me. But I don't know. I can check with Marlon and Vanita. I didn't follow that story myself. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that.
The reason why I think I'm sorry, attorneys. The reason why I think it got buried is because of the decision that came out from the Supreme Court about the tariffs, and I think that overshadowed a lot of things. But they're starting to talk about it, so I just want to see where that thread leads. But I also understand it is illegal to send out pre-printed ballots to anyone. Is that correct?
Well,
I think
pre-printed
what you're
ballots in
saying,
terms of who you vote for, yeah, I think that is true. And if that happened, that is inappropriate.
well, first of
When you
all,
say
you're not allowed to
pre-printed
send
ballot,
out.
go ahead.
Wait a second.
When you
You're
say
not allowed to send out ballots. Only the clerk of the respective
right.
process has the legal authority to send out ballots, but they should not be pre-marked. I mean, obviously that would be some level of criminality. So if that's what you're talking about, and nowhere in America are you allowed for individuals to send out ballots. Only the governing authority. The rights to run the election is governed by each state, but each state have their rules in place, and they're pretty similar in the sense that when they send out ballots, they're not pre-marked, and then they have a process for receiving them back. They logging them in, and how they count them may be slightly different, but there's a very specific process in American democracy as to how we deal with ballots.
And I haven't seen that story yet, Renee, but I'll keep I'll tune in and keep my ears open for that story as we in the upcoming week. And I'm searching now, Musk voting twice, and I don't it hasn't come up yet.
Okay, yeah, it was in Georgia that he got the slap on the wrist. But anyway, those are the reports I'm hearing. I haven't dug any deeper either. But also the Fulton ballot confiscation. There's a lot wrong with that, and apparently that might backfire on them too. But those are just my thoughts for the week. So I'm going to let someone else talk. Thank you.
She's right about one thing. I did miss this story. I just did a search on the internet, and I discovered that apparently I completely missed this. They said that members of the Georgia State Election Board voted Wednesday to issue a formal letter of reprimand to Musk's America PAC over the billionaire's technocrat illegal scheme to get Trump elected in Georgia. Georgia was a key battleground state in 2024, was the target of aggressive campaigning by Trump team. So In October 2024, the Georgia Secretary of State office launched an investigation after receiving numerous reports from residents across several counties saying they've received partially pre-filled absentee ballot application from Months America PAC, according to John Fever, the state election board chairman. There was evidence to suggest America PAC had violated state law that prohibited any person or entity other than an authorized relative to send an elector an absentee ballot application pre-filled with the elector's required information, according to the SBC vice chairman. So that's a fascinating story. I admit that. Wow. And she's right about one thing. It did get buried in the news because I didn't know that that story existed about Elon Musk's team being reprimanded for election fraud. Now, having said that, but we're back to this issue, though. We had so many important legal decisions that come out. It's hard to track each and every one of them in terms of whether or not there's something that will resonate. The one thing that we did not talk about this week, ladies and gentlemen, was a bomb hit in England. I don't know whether anybody paid attention to it. Within the 400 years, for the first time, they had a person who was in line to be King of England was arrested over the Jeffrey Epstein debacle. Did anybody follow that story this week?
Yeah, I did see that. And for your audience, Nathaniel, he basically was stripped of his title previously because of allegations regarding this matter. And now it looks like he's been arrested and will have to be held accountable. But it wasn't necessarily for the Epstein. It was basically for sexual impropriety. It was because of an allegation that he was passing secret information on to Epstein. So we'll have to see how that turns out.
Exactly. There's
Well,
also talk that even though he had been stripped of his titles, he's still number 8 in the line of succession. And I just heard today that there's consideration of stripping him from that. What's more glaring is that we see across the nation or across the world uh, leaders and countries stepping up and taking accountability. And we haven't seen any of that here in the United States. Um, we There's yet to be, a reckoning over the Epstein files. Um, we did see Tom Pritzker of the Hyatt Hotels. He stepped down from his position. The female general counsel of Goldman Sachs stepped down as well. Um, Brad Karp, who is the prior chairman of Paul Weiss law firm that had negotiated a deal with Trump's administration, he stepped down from his role. We saw Larry Summers step down, as well. But we have not seen any investigation. As a matter of fact, the uh, president's counsel stated that there would be no investigation of the executives across every industry sector that are implicated in the Epstein files. But I'm confident that the survivors and the victims will not rest until there's accountability and until justice is served. Also, keep in mind that there's still 3 million records that have not been released pursuant
um,
to a law which mandated that those records be released by December 19th. So they're in violation of the law.
Marlon, the whole time you work for the Justice Department, this is so incredible to me that you could have 3, 4, 5 million documents. on a single investigation where only one person got indicted. I don't understand that. Maybe it's outside of my world, outside of my practice area, but I've never seen such a massive investigation that result in so little results. What am I missing?
Yeah, I think it's very unusual. And I think that now that the spotlight's on, you're going to see the fact that there, were conclusions that just don't match the facts. So I think the bottom line, you are correct that it's very unusual, and we'll have to see where the investigation goes. And hopefully Congress will get more involved and hold people accountable for any wrongdoing regarding these matters. But what will be important if they get the memos, the prosecution memos, will be important to see what the thought process was when these cases were, originally brought and squelched.
Yeah, but I still don't understand. I mean, if you have, say, 4 or 5 million documents, that tells me that somebody's on the government payroll doing a mass amount of work, salary and expenses to obtain all this evidence, and it goes nowhere. And that's what I'm baffled about. How could you use that much government resources to investigate anyone? I mean, it's sort of like, um, you know, I don't do criminal practice, but I was appointed in one case. And I saw the mass amount of work they had done to bring down a drug operation and a murder, but it went on for several years, and it didn't involve a tenth of the amount of paperwork this investigation did. And they ended up prosecuting about 30 people in that case. And that was my involvement, I guess, in a criminal enterprise like that. But this right here just baffles me to have so much work done with so little result.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're just going to have to keep a close eye and see what happens now that the spotlight's on, and see what missteps were made, and hopefully people will be held accountable.
Attorney Bank, one last comment before we close out.
That Jesse Jackson wasn't just one of the most consequential civil and human rights leaders of modern times. In my view, he is one of the most consequential, courageous leaders of all time. And we'll have an opportunity to celebrate his life and his legacy. I put specifics in the chat box. He's going to be honored, of course, here in Chicago, as well as South Carolina and Washington, D.C., although not lying in state, apparently. In Chicago, there will be the People's Celebration at the House of Hope on March 6th. And on March 7th, there will be a private homegoing celebration at Rainbow Push.
Marlon, one final comment.
Well, he really set the standard and gave us a pathway. We just have to follow it.
For all our audience, we lost a generational leader, but the fight continues. And we call on each and every one of you to make at least 100 phone calls in the next several elections to get your friends and neighbors. We only have one thing that we could do to change the course of history. We see these level of criminality never before experienced in American politics. But you yourself have to take the responsibility to make sure that everyone you know get out and vote. That's the remedy. That's what the market's all about. So thank you for joining our show, and join us next week as we deal with legal issues of the day. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed weekend.